Just a few quick training disclaimers. One, poverty is relative. There's a difference between situational poverty and generational poverty. There's a difference between simple living and poverty. One of the key things I want you to remain aware of when I say poverty is to think the impact of the constant trauma of being in survival mode. Also, this training and the research that supports this training is all based on patterns, so there are always exceptions to the rule. And lastly, I want you to remember that schools, that employment, that social services are all based on middle class norms. And as we go through this training, you'll understand why that's important. A good example of people being forced into poverty is the 2005 crisis of the Katrina hurricane. When one's attention is focused on the unfolding crisis of the day, people in poverty fall into what Paulo Freire calls the tyranny of the moment. Peter Schwartz adds, the need to act overwhelms any willingness people have to learn. Poverty robs people of future stories, commitment to education. It requires them to use reactive skills, not true decision making, to survive. It robs them of power to solve problems in such a way to change the environment or to make future stories come true. It's wrong to assume a person's a victim of poverty because of their own behaviors or actions, and it's also wrong to assume that it's because of things outside of one's control. Research has shown that it's not an issue of either or, but instead is a reality of both and. Research highlights 4 areas that converge together that exacerbates the issue of poverty in our community. Let's look at them. Research has shown that one of the factors is the behaviors of individuals. Issues like morality, crime, work ethic, spending habits, mental illness. Another factor involved is the human and social capital in community. The issue of intellectual capital, availability of well-paying jobs, the quality of education, childcare for working families. Another factor is exploitation, the drug trade, cash advance lenders, subprime lenders, human trafficking. And one of the last factors studied is the political and economic structures, the issue of globalization, job loss, the decline of unions, salary ratio of CEO to the line worker. Now we get into the definition of poverty. Poverty is the extent to which one does without resources. Let's read off a list of what those resources are. It's financial, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, support systems, relationship or role models, knowledge of hidden rules, and coping strategies. Let's start with financial resources. Financial. Many of us would regard this as the most important part of poverty, but we now realize that there are many parts that contribute to poverty. But financial is simply having the money to purchase goods and services. Emotional resources. This is perhaps one of the most important resources because you have to have the ability to survive in a negative situation without becoming self-destructive. This is shown through perseverance, through stamina, through choices. Mental resources. This is the ability to read, to write, to compute, and to access information. Spiritual resources. You and I both know how important this is, and it enables the individual to not see themselves as worthless or useless, but they begin to see that they have worth, that they have value, and that they're fully capable. Physical. This enables an individual to be self-sufficient. Support systems. This is important just in case you have to go to work one day and the baby's sick and the money's tight. Who watches the children? Relationships are role models. The key thing is we all have role models, but we must consider whether the role models are appropriate and nurturing. Knowledge of hidden rules. Each and every social class has specific rules and norms that govern behavior. We'll learn more about this as we go on in the training. Coping strategy. This is essentially the ability to translate an issue from personal back to the issue. Let's take a look at how these resources work together through this case study. Opie's a 12-year-old African-American girl, the oldest of 5 children. She runs a household because her mother, Oprah, works long hours as a domestic. You are Opie's mother, Oprah. You are 32 years old. You were married for 10 years to your husband, but he was killed in a car accident 2 years ago. You work 60 hours a week as a domestic for a doctor. You go to Calvary Chapel every Sunday. Your employer treats you well, and you take home about $300 every week. You ride public transport, and it's your desire to see your children go to college even though you finished 10th grade yourself. Your employer gives you a $400 Christmas bonus. You thank the Lord at church for the gift. After church, 3 people approach you privately. One asks for $50 to have the electricity turned on at their house. One asks for $100 to feed her brother's family. And one asks for $60 to replace a pair of broken glasses. You're hoping to save some money for an emergency. Also, Opie has the opportunity to be in a state-sponsored competition that requires after-school practices. You want her to do that, but you must have her home after school every day. What resources does Opie and Oprah have? Also, what would you do in this situation?